Joining me now from Kielce, Poland is Dominik Tarczynski. He is a member of Poland's parliament for the ruling Law and Justice Party and a member of the European Affairs Committee. And from Milan is Matteo, a research fellow specializing in migration for the Italian Institute for International Political Studies. Thanks both so much for joining us. Let me just preface this by saying I know both of you have a problem in some form or another with this proposal. But Matteo, let me start with you. Is it at least a step in the right direction?
Well, certainly it is interesting in itself, but the problem is that we are trying to control the flows of migrants coming in, while the migration crisis right now has receded to the back, and this is interesting in itself, but also a bit worrying. So we try to find a consensus on migrant flows and how to redistribute them within Europe, or without solidarity, how to deal with them in any way. While let's say that the crisis has receded in the back, for example, arrivals to Italy are 80% lower than last year's and 2 years back, while maybe we should focus more on what is happening ashore. So in terms of migrant stocks and how do we deal with them? Either we integrate them or we increase returns and so on. So I mean, the proposal is a step in an interesting direction, but in itself, it might not be exactly what we need right now in order to advance the agenda on migration in Europe.
Okay, interestingly said, a step in an interesting direction. But does the notion of paying Matteo, does the notion of paying per migrant on that basis, does it help?
Yeah, I'm not against financial incentives per se. I think that, for example, the 6,000 euros that have been set up very low, just take Italy for a second. Although if you look at the proposal, actually this benefit would not get to Italy because it's where migrants arrive, not where they would be relocated within EU. But anyway, take Italy. It costs to receive a migrant and just give him the first basic needs is about 12,000 euros per year. So it would cover about half of what is needed in Italy. So clearly, if you want to make this politically feasible, you should raise the stakes financially. At the same time, we know that the EU is only dealing with so much money that the EU member states want to give it. So clearly, the European Commission has made everything to cater to member states' needs. But insofar as member states do not raise the financial portfolio of the Commission, still the Commission will only be able to offer so much, and clearly it's not enough for many countries.
Okay, Matteo, before I get to Dominik, just the last angle on this. What about the proposal for these processing centers? Some say it's too closely based on the Australian model that's failed. What do you think?
Well, actually, I think first, the Australian model has not failed that much, meaning that it's true that arrivals have gone a lot down, and even death and sea have gone down. The problem is that the EU is not Australia, and it's hard to see any third country accepting these proposals. But also, we need to look at the contradictions of these proposals. So whether we do, let's say that we find a third country accepting these control centers, what do we do with the people arriving there? Do we think that we hope that everybody go there instead of departing from going at sea? So then it acts as a very high pull factor, bringing everybody there. Or do we simply wait for people departing at sea and then we bring them back ashore? So then we are not avoiding the risk of death in the Mediterranean, because people will still rely on migrant traffickers in order to at least go at sea and hoping to be rescued and being brought back instead, so as to file their asylum claim. So in the end, we need to solve this.
Okay, Dominik, let me ask you then. I mean, as far as you're concerned, really none of this proposal in any of its aspects really makes sense to you at all, huh?
Of course not. Another year, another proposal, another discussion. It has nothing to do with the logic. Listen to the Polish people. Listen to the Polish government. We've been saying since this problem started, since Germany started this madness, the problem has to be solved in the place where the problem appeared. They're trying to tell us about the ships, about the docks, about the hotspots. It's not about the way illegal immigrants, which some journalists and media are called refugees, are coming. They might come in with the private jets. They can afford it. Some of them, they can afford to come with the private planes. Some of them, they can take trains. It's not about the way they're traveling. Some of them can walk throughout the forests. It's all about the whole idea of solving this problem. Our government was very straight. We have to solve the problem where it appears, in Syria, in Iraq, in other countries. But then we started to receiving Africans who are coming here telling us that they are from Syria. Look what's happening in Spain last week, what's happened in Greece. So this is not about refugees. I keep repeating this for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with the refugees. If you want to be a refugee, apply for it, go through the legal path, and then wait for a decision.
Dominik, you're acting as if there are regular systems.
If you're not coming without documents or with 5 passports.
Right, but you're acting as if regular systems exist in these highly destabilized countries where people can simply just ask for criminal records to process.
Not Poland. Poland is not destabilized.
No, I'm not talking about Poland. I'm talking about the refugees and the asylum seekers that are coming into Europe. They can't simply provide the documentation required to apply properly for European asylum.
Are you serious? Some of them are coming with the 5 passports.
Some of them. We're talking about the majority of the people here, the absolutely desperate people in poor conditions mostly that are either running from war.
Let me tell you a story then.
But first of all, Dominik, let me just establish this then. I just have to establish this. Do you have any sympathy at all for the very desperate human beings who just want to lead a better and safer life like millions of Poles did under the Soviet Union? Millions of Poles that were trying to escape, that were running to the United States, for example. Similar conditions. Do you have any sympathy for the people in this crisis today?
I'll answer your question, but before I'll answer your question about my love to the people, I'd like to ask you how many Poles blow themselves up in America or any other place in the world? How many? 0. I love my 0. Not even one Polish blew himself up because of his religion, because of his fantasy, because of his hatred, because of his religion. None. So that is the difference between Europeans, between Polish.
Every single refugee and migrant of the thousands and thousands in this situation right now are the same as whatever terrorist might have attacked any site around the world. They're all the same.
You compared Polish.
No, I'm talking about people in desperate situations that are looking for a better life.
They can apply.
Just like Poles did during Soviet times.
Not a problem at all. Everyone from around the world can apply for asylum seeker, for migration, for a permission to be in Poland or in Europe, but they have to apply. That's very simple. That's very simple legal path to do so. So it's not me who is trying to put all these poor people into the one box, saying that they are terrorists or illegal immigrants. It's you who is trying to put them in a box of poor people. Look at the numbers, and look how many of them were refugees. I'm talking about very exact numbers of terrorist attacks in Paris, in Belgium, in London, even in Turkey, actually. So let's talk about the facts, not about your or my imagination.
Okay, let me bring in, from Malta's capital, Valletta, we have Jelka Kretzschmar. She's a spokeswoman for the search and rescue group CI, which helps refugees at sea. Jelka, I don't know how much of Dominik's comments you just heard there, but not only does he disagree with every single aspect of the recent proposal to help solve this crisis, but at its
it's just a step backwards.
Let me ask Jelka what she thinks, Dominik, of your position on this. Jelka, go ahead.
Thanks, first of all, for inviting me to participate in that conversation. Just in the last few minutes, I heard very, very strong words, which are very far from the actual discussion I think should be about.
Honest.
I think, first of all, we should talk about humans, not about legislations, and we're talking about humans and individuals that are suffering for very different cases, which are usually torture, slavery, and different causes. And we're not talking about a massive terrorist influx of Europe, and not talking about fear-making politics. We, in the rescue area in the Mediterranean, we engage in purely life-saving missions, which is very far, actually, I guess, from the discrediting of humans that are searching for a harbor, for a safe spot to live at, with the hope that can be Europe at some point. So I think we're very far from that. But yeah, hi,
right.
Thanks for having me.
Let me get back to Matteo then, and I have actually a few questions for all of you to comment on that are very important issues in all of this. Dominik did bring this up, and correctly so, I think we would all agree that a huge part of the problem is addressing the issues in the countries of origin in order to lessen the migrant refugee crisis. So when we see, Matteo, for example, the African Observatory for Migration and Development, established by the African Union. Do you hold out more hope for that solution then? Is that more what the European Union should be looking at? I know they've pressed for it before and they haven't had much success, but is that the smarter direction, arguably, to go in?
Well, I would point you to two facts. First of all, the fact that actually the EU is doing the reverse, I would say. So taking away some money from the European Development Fund, which is meant to, help African countries to develop, and putting it into the migration-related security part. So we try to ask African countries to cooperate with us in migration-related measures. So they are constraining measures and not in developing themselves. And the second thing is that we really have to come to terms with the fact that development does not mean less migration. Usually for countries that are very poor, like sub-Saharan African countries that have an average salary of 1,600 euros per year, you should compare that to 30,000 euros per year in the EU. So usually this makes it so that the more they develop, at least initially, the more migration will rise. So this is important to know. It's not, the root causes can be addressed, but it's not that we should expect that migration drops due to that. Can I just add one thing on terrorism? Because data is important. And out of the people that have come to Europe overall, through the refugee crisis, so throughout 2013, 2014, 2015, and up to now, it's just 0.0001% who tried or attempted to commit an act of terror. And clearly, there might be radicalized people in there, but we should be very, very aware of the fact that most of the people who come here because they want to work, not because they want to commit an act of terror.
Okay, Dominik, I'll let you respond.
Well, first of all, if African countries want us to help them to be developed, they have to have this desire itself. They have to want it. They have to stop the corruption. They have to stop the war of the castes when you have very rich people and the poor people. So let's not go into this discussion about the Africa and about the way they rule themselves, because we're going to go into the wrong direction. I'd like to go back to the Malta, what I heard from Malta about humanitarian attitude, about the humanity. I do love people. That was the question. I do love the people. I'm a Christian. But what I heard from Malta, it sounds to me like you are a little bit worse than we are, because we are helping. You don't want to help. You don't understand humanity. I do understand humanity. I do understand the love to the people. But the most important thing I do understand is the love to my personal family, to my people around me, and then to the people next to me, and the country next to me, and then somewhere else. So if you want to call us the worst Christians or the worst humans, I don't mind, until my family is safe. It's so simple. If you want to help, if you want to take this burden, take it. Take it all. That's what I said to the Germans. If you want to take refugees, take them all. We're not going to take them unless they will not go through the legal path of every single person who wants to apply for asylum in Poland.
Okay, Jelka, I'll let you respond quickly. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strong accusation in terms of humanitarian, in terms of not being humanitarian. But at the end of the day, I think the European Union is there for a reason.
If you better, take them all. Take them all. You better. You're going to feel better.
You are part of the European Union, though, Dominik.
Okay, thank you.
If you don't want to be part of the European Union, maybe.
But
sorry,
we are
Jelka,
a
go ahead.
sovereign country. We are a sovereign country.
It's really interesting. Is there a chance that we can have a normal grown-up conversation instead of screaming at each other? It would be very pleasing. I understand that there might be frustration here and there, but at the same time, I think there should be European solutions for the migration problems. And there should be collective solutions, because what I see is not that there is a migration crisis. I see there is a political crisis within the European Union, not being able to find solutions together that have been for problems that are evident for years. It's nothing new what happens right now. It's nothing new that the migration will grow. It's nothing new that migration is there for more than 10 years. So that there is no solution up to now is a problem of the European legislations and the basis, or a problem of countries refusing to work on those kind of issues together. When it comes for addressing the very, very source of the problem in countries in different countries in Africa, Central and in the North, I think they're very diverse problems, and I think it's very good that Caritas as well is addressing
I'd like to respond to that. Just one sentence.
Dominik, quickly, one sentence before I need to move on to a final point. One sentence,
One sentence. This is not the European problem. Stop using this sentence. This is a worldwide crisis. Where is Saudi Arabia, one of the richest countries in the world? Where is Qatar? Most of these refugees are Muslims, which are neighbors to this country. So why you are calling this European problem? It is not. And European Union, it's not responsible for Angela Merkel madness and looking for cheap labor.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
I think it's worth it to have another conversation on Angela Merkel if you want so, but what I think is honestly, yes, there should be more countries involved in a global migrant crisis, which is happening, which is going to continue, and there should be more collaborations, definitely, and all countries should be included. But it's not a migration based on, wait, I'm not finished. It's not a problem based on religion. Migration movements have a lot to do with economic problems, with economic developments in the southern hemisphere, and this again is strongly connected to the Western world and with post-colonial and colonial repression of the European countries. So refusing to have responsibilities right now is really sad, honestly.
Okay, before we go, Matteo, I'd like to finish one final point with you because we just have a few minutes left. Dominik, let me just get to one last point with Matteo here. There is an issue within the European Union trying to solve this crisis, in that there are countries, one country in particular, that is actually looking to take in migrants and refugees and is actually being rejected as a final point for resettlement. It is Portugal. Portugal has received less than half of the asylum seekers it's legally obligated to take under the new EU laws. How do you address that? Because the opportunities are there to resettle in Europe for some of these asylum seekers, and yet they don't want to settle in a country like Portugal where they feel isolated and there is a lack of opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, we know that relocation, so within the EU, and resettlement from outside the EU to other EU countries, I mean, it's always complicated because, you know, migrants' decisions and preferences should be taken care of. But clearly, we should first, you know, we should know that migrants' preferences should come as a third before there should be EU-wide solidarity. Clearly, there is not. So first, we should solve that problem. We continue to say it's not a EU-wide problem, but it is clearly. It has to do with Schengen, the Schengen Agreement, so the collective border of the European Union. And just to point to this fact, to my Polish friend, we I think made very interesting points. I just wanted to point to the fact that about 200,000 Ukrainians.
To Australia. Their prime minister would be happy to take
Dominik, please let Matteo finish. Thank you.
After 2014, and Poland was quite good at taking care of them, giving them, for example, labor permits. And it's interesting how these different discrepancies see is playing out both in Poland and in other countries. I understand there are different sensitivities on this matter, but we should try to overcome them in some way.
Okay, Matteo, I will have to give you the last word because unfortunately we are completely out of time. For this segment of the Newsmakers, I'd like to thank all three of you so much for joining us.